You see, I want to almost disagree completely with you there, Johan. I believe, like, even though we think of, for example, being born deaf as something that is bad, right? Because none of us right now would want to lose our hearing. So we think, if I have this loss of this thing, that would be something that would be bad to me. But again, like, in at least my thinking of it, that this thing could maybe force you to be even more present. It could literally, as you said, be a whole life experience that is so unlike any life experience any other human gets to live, and it's so unique and so special in that way, that I believe it's a blessing no matter what. And it can go into, like, even the most horrible of circumstances, it's still a divine and unique experience. And at the end of the day, the mind of God wants to experience all of these possibilities. If you think about, like, an imagination, we do imagine both sides of the spectrum, but it's still a side of the spectrum. It's still the same oneness. It's not, and this is something we as humans do as well, right? We think of temperature and we think of something as hot and cold. But in the universal scale, all that hot and cold really is a property of something. So, like, the molecules are vibrating faster or slower. It is human touch and our susceptibility to getting cooked that realizes that thing is hot and stops us from touching that thing. If we didn't have those senses, if we couldn't, figure out how to feel warm or cold, then it would not be, something that's dualistic to us. We would just be like, oh, that thing has a temperature. And that's all it was. Like, if it is cold or hot, that is beside the point. And understanding that we do the same thing with our entire universe and our own bodies. Like, we think of ourselves as the body mind, and that when the body mind ends, like, everything ends. When in fact, it's quite the opposite.
You as well, my friend.
Dude, how's life been?
I can't complain. It's been busy, but it's been a good busy. So
I feel like that's one of the nicest areas to be in with your life. It's when you're busy, but you're kind of happy to be busy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. But bad busy is which I mean, I think assigning any sort of value to some things that can be neutral or can be problematic. But, like, yeah, it's a good thing. It's good to be busy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It can get a little problematic to assign, like, a negative and a positive to something that's inherently neutral. But sometimes it is nice. It is good to praise certain things. Just get that. Just make yourself feel a little better.
Yeah, exactly.
So, where are you from?
I'm from Kansas, the good old Midwest of the United States, my friend.
Nice. What
What about you?
I'm from South Africa, same as Lucian.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I've never been to America. I would love to go at one point. It's just don't see it happening in the next foreseeable years, which sucks.
Right. I know, it's crazy.
But
it's been a bummer because I
mean, if
I love
anything,
traveling.
we can travel through the eyes and the opinions and the minds of the people we have on these podcasts.
Exactly.
Yep. That's a very beautiful way of putting that.
And I feel like this is definitely something we're moving towards doing as well. Like, maybe this whole COVID thing kind of prompted us, or I don't want to say the word forced us to like reach this point of more interconnectivity when it comes to our technology like this. And I do actually want to share the story of how me and, like, Bro V, as his what do we call it, as a creative name or a pseudo name, and Jeff, we were talking about the podcast on stream one day, and he sent this message like, hey dude, if you need, like, any help, like editing stuff or something like that, like, I would be more than willing to. And I reached out to him because I was, like, thinking about him, like I was meditating, thinking back on the stream, and I thought about you specifically, and I was like, man, like, what are the odds of, and I was, like, going through a trip of, like, feeling like I want to do something, but feeling I don't have enough time to do it. And then you basically just reached out for the thing I was asking for, basically, dude. And now Jeff is helping me with the Melt More Moments YouTube channel. So a channel more oriented towards cutting the main streams into a little bit more digestible bits, if you will.
That's really awesome. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's so weird how the universe uses you in ways that you never thought. Like you know, that was a passing comment to me. Not passing, like I meant it. I meant it's interesting because I've been lurking kind of on Estion streams for a while, and you know, I would comment here and there, being like, "Yo, your dancing's real cool, bro," or being like, "Yo, burn another one," or like, you know, some stupid shit. But like, I was just like, I saw it. I heard him talking about it, and I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna throw this in there. I don't know if anything will come of it. We'll see. You know, I've had a little bit of experience doing podcasts and stuff before, and so I was like, yeah, why not? I'll see. I'll throw this out here, and like, it's just crazy to like see the other side of that, of being like, that was something you were trying to manifest, and it happened. Like, you know, the whole, like, the universe, if you believe you deserve it, the universe will serve it. So
yeah, and
that's really well put, actually.
If you believe it, the universe will serve it. What did you say?
I say that again?
Yeah.
If you believe you deserve it, the universe will serve it.
Man,
okay, where's the pen and paper? I've started writing things down, bro. My memory, as good as my memory is, and as good as I would like to think it is, there's a reason that all of humanity has been written down. It is because our brains suck at remembering details.
It's so bad. Oh, that's funny. Estian and I were like just talking about that when we were talking earlier in the day. Earlier in the day for you, it's a new day for me, but
yeah, like me and Jeff, like this morning, man, no, I'm tripping about the word morning now. So like this morning I woke up not feeling, you know, like I should be dancing. So I like kind of just sat down, chilled out for this morning stream, waiting for the sun to rise. And we basically shared that moment. And basically like an hour, maybe an hour and a half into the stream, Jeff is like, he would like to have a call. And I'm like, it may be a little bit unorthodox, but do you want to like have a call while I'm still streaming? And he was like, yeah. And I basically like walked around talking to Jeff on the phone while streaming. I think me and you had like an hour and a half chat this morning as well.
Yeah, it was a very long chat. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun, man. It's nice to catch up, dude. I feel like this morning was very like one of those organic chats where it feels like old friends catching up again.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I know. I was thinking about that because, like, you know, you had to jet real quick, and I just happened to like look down, and I didn't feel like that much like time had passed. You know, it just felt like I was just conversing with an old friend, and it's like, what, maybe the second time that we've ever talked to each other. And like, it's so crazy how that stuff happens.
But do you know what I think it is? I've spent a lot of time thinking about these podcasts. Fuck you, phone. I've spent a lot of time thinking about these podcasts and how you can possibly have a conversation with somebody that you've never met and look down and an hour and a half's gone by and you did not even pick it up in the slightest. And I think the answer to it is because the people that are on these podcasts are people that are willing to talk to you. And I don't mean just sit and listen, and I mean genuinely have a conversation where each party is willing to contribute not to themselves, but to this like general middle idea, this like amalgamation of thoughts that just whenever you start diving into becomes kind of timeless. And suddenly you can get to this point where you can have this conversation about something, even though it's a random stranger. And I think it has to do a lot with how you communicate. Communication in the sense of like talking to somebody about not necessarily a middle ground idea, but like something in regards to each person tends to be a bit harder to do. Or like when you tell stories about something that's happened in your life, yeah, it's interesting, but it doesn't produce the same amount of conversation, this philosophical idea of sitting and talking about an idea rather than pre things that have happened, I think is a major cause for this and that sensation.
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting too because like I know Estian talks a lot about like co-creating and how like even just conversations like this are like something, and I like you said, it's an idea that we're almost like creating together, and how it's like, yeah, it is organic. Like you said, it's not just me telling you something and you having to like listen it and like, sure, I can share that experience with you, and that's interesting, and I like want to learn about other people's lives. But when you're like in the moment together and creating something together, I think that's where this comes from.
Yeah, I feel that completely, actually, dude. And like it makes me happy because that's literally what I was thinking as well. Like it's that co-created experience of having these conversations. And like there's this really cool idea I've recently been introduced to, that is understanding that there are three types of creation. Mm-hmm. The first type of creation is the material creation, where you take something physical from this like planet, for example, and then you turn it into something else, chopping down a tree and building a closet, a space or something like that, or a box out of the wood. That is the first type of creation. The second type of creation is procreation, where you give your seed to an egg, or an egg to the seed, and you basically create another being by giving these small pieces of yourself, arguably genetic pieces of yourself, and then co-creating to make this little being. And then there's the third way of creating, which is creating in your mind, imagining things, seeing things in your mind's eye. And that is the actual divine creative power we've been given. Because as if the whole, we are created in the image of God thing is to be taken literally, excuse the noise, I think of it as like understanding that we have that same capacity to create in our minds like that, because God wouldn't be able to create with anything, external from him, like a resource like the wood is to us. God also doesn't have that duality nature where it can procreate with something else to create what it has right now. And then there's also the understanding that if God creates anything, he would create in like the grand mind of God. And with that understanding, we quite literally are a thought, an imagination, a thinking of God right now in this moment.
Sweet fuck. Like it gets quite insane when you start thinking about it, and how if you start translating ideas into what they, I don't want to say what they are, because it's still a it's still not a 100% proven thing. It's a theory that you can feel is true, but there's still no real way to prove it. So I'm hesitant to say it's the answer, but it's insane to me what type of answers you can come up when you actually start looking more in depth into this world and this reality and the scriptures and what people have said before.
Yeah, dude, and the fact that at the end of it stands as well is like we're aware of the things we're saying, and we're using such limited vocabularies to communicate ideas that are so far beyond us. And I think that's the coolest part about human beings. It's just that, dude, like, even though it could be seen as something that's pointless, trying to strive to understand what it is we're experiencing, where it is we're experiencing it. But I feel it's just, human nature to try and question. And it's that questioning that leads to answers as well.
So talking about questioning and thought and that, I wanna ask you guys a question. And it's something that came up recently in one of my meditation sessions while I was thinking about it. And it's the idea that, do you guys think we limit ourselves by having gotten used to think in words?
That's interesting.
Because if you sit and think, and it's kind of why I feel meditation gets so powerful, because eventually you stop actively thinking. You're not talking to yourself in words, but you get feelings and ideas that kind of just, I don't know if you can hear that, this snap in and out of existence. And I don't know, I get this feeling that by getting so used to talking as our main way of communicating, we've kind of indirectly slowed down our thought processes by wanting to articulate it into words, because we want to structure our brain. And the only structure we currently have for ideas is to bind them to words. So you sit in this place of trying to think and you're binding everything to words. But yeah.
There's two things I want to say about that, actually. The first thing is that this, like with the teaching that I learned, the one I shared about the, being a creation as a thought in the mind of God, it literally comes back to that meditation as well. Because if God was to do anything, God is probably meditating, like being in a complete state of calm awareness of present experience, right? And in that calm awareness of present experience, in the divine infinite mind, why would he want to do anything else other than that? And with that calmness can be creativity as well, and then create these whole universes for God to be the eye in and witness everything that happens in this grand imagination that is entire universe, this entire dimensions, galaxies, whatever you will. And then the second thing is the fact that we quite literally had to trade pieces of our brain for the ability to speak. So our primate ancestors have the ability to remember like 9-digit numbers that flash for like 0.5 seconds on a screen, and they can tap them on a screen, like going from 1 up to 9. And for a human to do that is basically impossible. But for a chimpanzee to have to do that, they had to survive and basically count the amount of enemies in a immediate situation and analyze whether or not they have to stay, pursue, or flee, because it was literally life or death. And since we learned how to communicate, we kind of lost that need or that urgency to have that as an ability. And we started using communication as an ability to like strengthen our numbers. And I feel like basically, I don't know if you understand, the whole common ancestor thing that they say. Like we're not monkeys, we share a common ancestor with monkeys. So what that means is like at one point there was a deciding point whether to stay in the trees or to descend down to the land and to become like ground-faring animals. And with the becoming ground-faring and going into the Safara, like wide open spaces of lions and stuff, we had to learn how to communicate, to hunt, and to defend ourselves. And that's basically where the trade-off happened. And that's where we came from. So if it wasn't for communication, the point I'm trying to make is we wouldn't have been what we are right now. So I think communication was more of a creative force than it is of a destructive one, at least in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. See, I didn't think about it in the long aspect of humanity and our need for communication. It's just it's such an interesting question to me, because it falls under the same. How do you think if you're deaf? Do you just see do you just see images? Do you see hand signs? Do you see color? How does somebody that's blind think about objects? They've never seen them. Like that's where this becomes so interesting to me, because certain aspects of us are so ingrained in the way our brains process thoughts, because we're so used to using these senses.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how much of it actually does impact our ability to think. Not necessarily the how we think, but the ability to think, and what slows us down and what doesn't. And actually, I think that communication's a good way of, it might have slowed down our overall thinking, but I think it's made thinking more clear.
Sure. Because I think we get to like assign, like you said, it's like we try, like when we have these thoughts or when we're thinking of things, we try so hard to assign them words to be able to decipher them. It's the interesting thing of like trying to describe your dreams to somebody. It's very difficult sometimes because you're like, I was in the moment, unless it's like a very lucid and like aware dream. Sometimes it's just this kind of this amalgamous thing that happened, and you can think about it and think back to that dream. Like I had a very strange dream last night, and I was thinking about it this morning because I wanted to come on the podcast and kind of talk about it. But as we're sitting here, I couldn't put words to what it was. And part of that's because like it's slipping away. It happened when I was, in a different state of consciousness, but it's like, it's also like, it's something that was in my head and I have a difficult time assigning words to try to describe to other people. And sometimes that is a limiting factor because we can describe things to each other because all three of us speak English. We're talking to each other and we're having like a conversation. But it's like, if I had a thought, like a creative thought, because I'm a musician, I play music with my friends. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to get across what it is that I'm trying to do or where I'm trying to take a song or something like that if we're co-creating together, because there isn't always necessarily the language for it. I can hear it in my head and be like, okay, this is how I want to do it, but then I have to translate it into something that I'm doing. And that's difficult. There is a limit. There's a disconnect there at times.
That's really interesting. And it kind of makes me think of, again, this, like, at least the way I feel about it is this understanding of that I again, and you can kind of take away everything from it to answer a bit of your question as well, Johan. You can like take away our ability to see, to hear, to taste, to feel anything. You will still be that I awareness, but you won't necessarily need any of these external senses to have that experience, to have the imaginations of color, even like in that complete inert state. I also think like that awareness, that I awareness, like I am, in a deaf person, I feel takes a little bit more presence, where there's, I think, I don't know at all, and I'm speaking, completely shotgun or cannon or whatever you want to say. And it's just, I think they have a little bit more sense of, I am the observer of this situation that's going on right now, instead of having that inner chatter of trying to figure out what to say next, what to do next, because there is no saying something or listening to someone say something to you. At least that's what I feel about it. That's what I think.
So you're saying like they're almost forced to be more present?
I think so. Like I want to Google it, but I don't know how. Are deaf people more present?
I think a good way of Googling that would be to go find a YouTube channel of a deaf person or a blind person and go interact with them a bit. Because I know there are a couple ones that that people do interact with, and it's really interesting to see that completely different aspect of life. And what also strikes me the most about people that are sensory deficient, would that be the politically correct way of saying that? I don't know, but yeah. And what I find the most insane is just how different everyday life is. Like a deaf person never wakes up with an alarm. They don't know what that's like. They wake up with their bed vibrating. They have a special thing that vibrates their bed to wake them up because they need to feel it. So it gets so cool to think about all these different aspects of life that you've never experienced, but that somebody else is getting to experience. And in some cases, it's not a good thing, but in most cases, it is.
You see, I want to almost disagree completely with you there, Johan. I believe, like, even though we think of, for example, being born deaf as something that is bad, right? Because none of us right now would want to lose our hearing. So we think, if I have this loss of this thing, that would be something that would be bad to me. But again, like, in at least my thinking of it, that this thing could maybe force you to be even more present. It could literally, as you said, be a whole life experience that is so unlike any life experience any other human gets to live. And it's so unique and so special in that way that I believe it's a blessing no matter what. And it can go into like even the most horrible of circumstances. It's still a divine and unique experience. And at the end of the day, the mind of God wants to experience all of these possibilities. If you think about like an imagination, we do imagine both sides of the spectrum, but it's still a side of the spectrum. It's still the same oneness. It's not, and this is something we as humans do as well, right? We think of temperature and we think of something as hot and cold. But in the universal scale, all that hot and cold really is a property of something. So like the molecules are vibrating faster or slower. It is human touch and our susceptibility to getting cooked that realizes that thing is hot and stops us from touching that thing. If we didn't have those senses, if we couldn't, figure out how to feel warm or cold, then it would not be, something that's dualistic to us. We would just be like, oh, that thing has a temperature. And that's all it was. Like if it is cold or hot, that is beside the point. And understanding that we do the same thing with our entire universe and our own bodies. Like we think of ourselves as the body mind, and that when the body mind ends, like everything ends, when in fact it's quite the opposite.
Very quick question: did you watch a meditation or refraction of consciousness by Rupert Spira? If you this video, if you haven't, you literally just said everything that this guy did in this meditation of an hour, which I find incredible because I watched this 2 days ago.
That's so interesting.
Like, if you go watch that, you will not believe he goes down on the I awareness rather than I body mind philosophy, and coming to understand that you are the thing that is aware rather than the mind or the body. Like, and he takes it quite far, and he starts going, and something that's kind of insane to realize is that awareness is infinite. It's not like any of the material things that has a beginning and an end, because
it's dimensionless.
Yeah, it's literally an infinite ball and putty of dimensionless energy that has this capability of interpreting this kind of, I don't want to call it one-dimensional, but it kind of is universe where nothing is really something until the awareness can pick it out as being different from the object. Like you said with temperature, where it takes the awareness to touch the thing and go, oh, that thing vibrates really quickly. I don't like, my flesh does not vibrate that quickly. Please stop. It takes that entire consciousness to actually interpret this thing as having temperature. And I don't remember where I was taking this. I was kind of just talking about it.
No, dude, like Rupert Spira, I have seen some of his stuff. I haven't seen this one. And like he definitely goes into a lot of these type of understandings. And it's again the difference between, or he asks, is there a difference between knowing, the knowing, the mind, knowing that it is the I, and being everything outside of this I that is being experienced by the I, right? And then like the other way of understanding it is that knowing is being, and being is knowing. Like everything is contained within that awareness. It's almost like, as you said, like it's I think of it, instead of as like a dimension, I think of it as a substrate, like the very thing that everything spawns within, and there's no escaping that infinite awareness.
Whoa, something that everything spawns in.
Like the lifeblood, dude, like the juice.
I love these moments where my brain's just like, yo, I'm not gonna talk for a bit. Let me process. Let me think through this.
Dude, like I feel like maybe the Meltmore name is like self-fulfilling, dude. It's supposed to melt people's minds.
Yeah.
Talking about the things that can,
Damn.
Oh, man, I just like, and this is something that Nia and Jeff discussed this morning, Johan. How many people are having these conversations, and is having these conversations more, like if more people had these conversations, how much of a difference would it make realistically?
I think a large portion, and this is one of my biggest things, is I think the realization that you are not different from the rest of the world, and that the I consciousness or I awareness philosophy is something sorely needed. And the reason I think so is imagine how much, I don't want to say better, yeah, it's better, people could interact with each other and understand each other and be kinder to each other if you understand that it's not just you. You don't need to be petty about something that happened. That's the stupidest emotion in the world. I think that would be so beneficial if you got more and more people talking about it. But it becomes hard to talk about it because not everybody is caught up. So sometimes you have to start at the very beginning, and you can't start somebody where we are, which is a little sad, and something my dad always said when I was born, he felt so sorry for me because he couldn't just give me all his knowledge. I had to learn it all over again. And I think that's a blessing, in my opinion, is getting to go through the process and figuring everything out yourself.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think everybody has their own time to come to something, whether that's, and I think maybe that's kind of what all of this is too, is whatever the I is, the universal consciousness taking its time to try to figure it out. It's like Estian and I were talking about this morning. Everything that we're experiencing, we're eventually going to take back to the bigger whole. And it's all part of learning about everything that's going on around us and learning about the interactions between the different parts of us. Because like I'm just one part, and we are all just one part of something bigger, whether that's physical, whether that's metaphysical, like, and so I don't know. It's fascinating. It's so interesting. It's so weird.
It is weird. Not gonna lie.
It's like strange. And I think it's supposed to be foreign to us because it's such a big concept that's so difficult to wrap our minds around, at least in this state of being.
Yeah, and I feel like it's because it's so vastly different from what we experience every day, this sort of thought, where you try and take everything we know about the physical and metaphysical, and you try and formulate it into a way that we can understand and grasp it.
Yeah. And it's like we were talking about earlier. It's about having this feeling and trying to put thoughts to it. But it's like sometimes, or like having like a feeling and a thought and trying to put words to it. But like sometimes that can chain it down. Sometimes that's limiting. It's putting something in a box, which Estian talks about all the time, can be such a negative thing as trying to like condense it into this one thing. It's like there's so much to everything, and everything is infinite. Like Estian talks about all the time. I'm looking at a blade of grass right now in my yard. I could go pick it up and I can move it 1 centimeter and look at it from different ways. Estian's been talking about this a lot lately, but it's like that vastness is everywhere. It's everything. We could even in millions and millions and millions of human lifetimes, we couldn't understand it. Even if we put all of our collective knowledge together, we still couldn't understand it.
Yeah,
and that's not to say we shouldn't try to. I think that's the purpose. I think we're supposed to like Estian was talking about being like going like earlier when we were talking on the phone, and he was walking around, and how he's talked about how he's like coming back to those like childhood roots of wonderment, of going around and feeling things and like being in the moment and like experiencing all these things and experiencing joy from it. I think that's the purpose, is for us to do that.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, bro. I do. I feel like that there's not having that wonderment and need to experience the world around you, and to be able, something I was actually thinking about today was that trying your hardest to never lose your childish wonder for the world. And that is something I am thoroughly going to try in my life, because that doesn't mean you be a child your entire life. That's not what it means that you go out and you experience everything like a child would. And you're still an adult in certain regards, but you cannot lose your child wonder, because that is the thing that makes life amazing. Is that when you suddenly feel like putting on music and dancing fucking in your house, go and do it. What's stopping you? Don't be like, oh no, people are gonna think I'm weird. Bro, have fun.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
And then to come back to your idea, to the thing about talking about infinity, it was something Christian and I were talking about. I don't remember when, but it was that again, the just, who was I talking to? Was I talking to my dad? I might have been talking to my dad. And it's just whenever you sit down and you focus on something, you need to remember how little of what you're seeing you are actually processing. At any given moment, you're processing, what would it be? 0.005%? No, it would be way less. What's 500 of a million? Math. I actually like math, so let's do this.
I'm fucking smooth brain with math, dude.
Yeah, same, but I do. It's like 0.0005% of what you are seeing at any given moment. That's sight, touch, hearing, everything. you're only experiencing 0.00005% of that. And when you realize that, you start actually focusing a lot more around rather than just focusing at one thing. Something I caught myself doing for the first time a couple of years ago was, videos of like panoramas or landscape views. I used to get so fixated on one thing that I would totally miss the entire picture. I'd see the one thing, like when somebody does a panorama of a person standing on a hill, I could only see the person for some reason. And it was that realization of consciously actually checking everything around you. When you start doing that, you realize that in front of you at every single nanosecond, infinity is happening. And genuine infinity. Not like our artificial infinity. I mean the infinity between 0 and 1, like Chris said last stream. It is actual infinity, and that blows my mind. Above anything ever.
Yeah, especially because like that literally we can't grasp that. Like I've watched so many like videos and tried to understand, like, and it's like eventually you always just get lost because there's like you can't. Infinity is not supposed to be able to be grasped. We are finite beings in an infinite universe, and we can't grasp what is the infinity.
Oh, dude, and like that, I don't know if you've heard him talk about that as well, but that Rupert Spira guy also talks about this understanding of like there's no such thing as matter, and this is actually something that's now a scientific understanding as well. That matter, basically the understanding of matter is that it's something that it's inert and dead, but we haven't found it. There's no such thing as matter because literally everything is comprised of something else, and it's infinite in that way as well, because we go down, like we as human beings were like, oh yeah, we're these big beings, and then we were like, oh look, we have these organs within us, and oh look, we have these blood cells, oh look, we have these other cells that make up us, oh look, and then we went down, oh look, there's these molecules that gets chained into proteins that make up these cells. Oh look, there are these atoms that make up these molecules. Oh look, there are these protons and electrons that make up these atoms. Oh look, there are these quarks, and it's not gonna stop.
It just keeps no, the only thing that stops is our understanding. Like what's the there's like the measurement that's so small that we can't, like
the Planck length.
Yeah, the Planck length. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was having a brain fart there. Yeah, exactly. But it's it's because we are finite. We can't. We can't understand it. It's so weird.
So something I also want to talk, since we're talking about infinity, is that video I just posted. I'll put a link to it on in the video. That video, when you give it a watch. For the first time, you know how we've seen the pictures of what a human cell looks like and everything, Estian? That is a video of what happens every single second in your body. Bro, that
it looks like an alien universe.
Bro, it is an alien universe. You literally watch cells pull themselves along on other cells as it's obviously not happening in a conscious process. It's happening.
I think it is. I think they are conscious of it, dude. I feel like it goes that far. As in that eye awareness, it's even in those cells, dude.
Okay, but how? See, this is now where we're gonna have how do you have an electrical charge pull things along? Would that still be consciousness? Because the movement of cells is as far as we understand how it happens, and so I'll caveat it with as much as we understand it, is you have a cell that hooks onto it because it gets a certain electrical and chemical signal. And then at one point, that signal does a 180 and the thing understands, oh, okay, I need to let go, and it lets go. It doesn't consciously decide it lets go because those electrical and chemical signals aren't there anymore. And the bonds physically break. And then the next part along gets the chemicals and that. So maybe it could be.
I was arriving there with you at the same time.
It's a trip. It's very weird, and I don't know if we're supposed to quite understand how it's supposed to work. But I feel like legitimately it has that eye awareness to realize that it is doing something, right? It serves a purpose. It has a function as to what it is it's doing right now. Like it's moving these chemicals, these molecules. Like let's go for a simple cell like the red blood cell. It's going through this process, right, of being oxygenated, being deoxygenated, and it's going through this process as well with literally being aware that it's being filled with oxygen. It moves back to your lungs, and then it goes to cells and it delivers these like oxygen molecules to them. And if it doesn't, then those molecules die. So again, it's this co-created experience that makes you. Everything co-creating together, dude.
Literally everything. I don't have words.
Bro, I feel like it's difficult to me as well. And this is something I was trying to grasp at this morning, talking to you, Jeff, about the depression thing, dude, and how I feel the more you start playing with these ideas and realizing the vastness of the universe, like it can, I guess it could like drive you into the other direction as well, where it could make you more depressed, realizing just how complex things are to make the experience that you are. But I just find so much beauty and fascination in looking at stuff like this and seeing, these intricate machineries that literally enable us just to process sugar, dude.
Yeah.
No, I
it's
can't...
like,
yeah, sorry, go for it.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, SDN and I talked briefly about that this morning too, is about like how sometimes that vastness of everything, and like you were saying, it takes so many like processes to even for us to like process sugar. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we don't even think of. But it's like in regards to depression, and sometimes like I had told him, it sometimes like thinking of the vastness of the universe and the vastness of like experience and being makes my problems feel smaller in comparison, as I'm like, why am I fretting over this thing that's like in the vastness of everything doesn't really matter? And that's not to say that like things do or don't matter. I'm not like invalidating anything anybody feels, but that's sometimes what helps me is I'm like, oh, this really isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Like it's going to be okay. And it helps if that helps me.
Dude, every day before I go to bed, I walk outside and I look up at the stars for at least 5 minutes, just appreciating the absolute fucking enormity above me. I'm not even talking about just the inside of me alone and my atoms and everything. I'm talking my atoms.
Outside of you.
I'm talking about outside of me. I'm talking about the universe. And you sit there and you go, this is insane. Fuck me, I'm lucky to be here. Holy shit. I am this insignificant, less than grain of sand in the grand scheme of the universe. And yet I can experience all of it. And I am the reason that everything around me is happening or getting experienced, would be a better way of putting that. And it just, every time it blows my mind, I get a huge smile on my face and I go to sleep. That it is, I agree with you so much. That vastness, yes, it can make it seem daunting. I agree. Sometimes you think about everything that needs to go into doing something, and you can take that in terms of like a project or that. And just understanding how big the universe is, you actually do get the sense of like, why do I worry? If everything always works out, and I do mean literally always, even if it isn't for you specifically, everything happens and turns into something else that was better and bigger. And for that reason, if something goes wrong for a bit, it's gonna get better. I promise it will.
Yeah.
It's not gonna, and if it doesn't, then you're probably not trying hard enough. That sounds so terrible. I hate saying that.
This is how I feel about it, bro. Like a creation is a creation nonetheless. Like I don't believe there is technically such a thing as a failure. Like, and as you said, like it might not turn out the best for you. I think it does still, because literally, and this is something I've said a bunch, you've heard me say this so much, Jeff, the understanding of I need do nothing. We can all sit right here, drink nothing again, eat nothing again, and die right here as we sit right here. And the only thing we're going to lose in that death is this single moment. That's what we're losing. We're not losing all of our past. We're not losing all of our future. We're losing this single moment. And it's that single moment that we always have. And we have this attachment to the idea of death. And, this, we're scared of it in a lot of ways as well. But there is no stopping of that awareness. It isn't the same way like throughout. It's only this transmutation or a shifting of energy. That's all that happens.
Yeah. And I heard another idea the other day that's also kind of interesting, is the idea that the reason we have something as memories is more of a reason to teach us, or more of a thing to teach us about how to anticipate the future, rather than it actually being, I don't want to say us, but it was kind of in the line of us, where memory shouldn't define you, but rather teach you about the possibility of the future. And I'd love to know your idea on that.
I was waiting for you to answer, Jeff.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
Like the thing I think about it realistically is that memory initially served the function of survival, right? If you remembered where the fruit was, and you remembered where your tree mates was, or your housemates was, or whatever, it was beneficial to you to remember both, and to remember where to go if you want to get food again, and then how to return home at the end of that excursion. And then with the introduction of language as well, we also definitely had to remember more things. And it definitely became like this, I feel maybe like a catch-up thing, where I think I've lost my point completely.
Dude, don't worry. It happens. It happens. Trying to keep neurons firing is hard. No, see, like, to me, memory feels like a thing that helps us at least proceed forward. It's the reason that we can actually produce things, is because the retaining of information and awareness that has happened builds and allows us to continue the future. Because by writing things down, and instead of trying to biologically remember them, we carved them into the universe. We've created this kind of, maybe it's created a energy shift in a direction towards the universe wanting to create this thing, because suddenly we've made the awareness part of the universe. And by remembering, you actually allow things to happen in the future.
No, dude, like talking about carving things into the universe, if you want to think about a hard drive, that's basically, a piece of the universe, a metal, pressed into a thin disk, and then there's grooves put into it that contains the information that it contains. And like the thing you mentioned actually kind of like reignited the thing I was thinking. I was like going down the strip of, we basically form these memories, or these good memories, at least in our way of understanding words and stuff like that, to initially survive. But I feel we have now started to use our memories as this like a poster board for our egos, where instead of realizing that our memories serves this function of keeping things coherent, as you said, moving things forward, so that we have some point of reference, we start to remember things, and then we attach those things to that I experience, instead of realizing that these are just memories. It's not what you are.
So you're basically taking you're trying to keep your awareness and take parts of the universe, attach them to yourself, rather than the understanding that you are this moment being experienced, and everything you remember isn't really you.
Oh, dude, and then if you want to go even further, nothing really is you. Because, like, again, like coming back, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, to this idea of being an idea in the mind of God, then there is no physicality to it. Because, like, if you want to think of it as like the mind of God being like a dimension higher than this one. So this dimension is captured within that dimension.
Yeah.
Then these thoughts, if I like, let's say for example, in your dream, like you can climb into things, you can fly, feel weightless, you can have all of these sensations within your mind. So you can create this sense of physicality within a dream state. And that is just within your very small and limited mind or limited consciousness. So in the divine mind of God and the divine like vastness of the consciousness of God, he could imagine something so real, I'm putting, air quotes, so real that it could feel physical, and that we could imagine this place, this thing I'm knocking on right now, to be physical, because I am this physical being that is experiencing this physicality right in front of me. But the I that is experiencing these things is apart from all of these things that I am experiencing. Because if I take away this physicality, I will still be aware that I am, right? So, and that is what God is that I am the awareness of that. We think of this as physical, but it can be just that I am, and then as a creation of that I am, it imagines this physicality world that we're living in.
Wow.
God in a perpetual state of meditation.
Like there's no proof that we're living in a real world, right?
No, of course not. It's the brain in the vat kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ish.
Melting. This is your brain on philosophy.
Yeah.
You just hear it bubbling.
I love how timeless this is. Like, talking about philosophy is something so old that it's the oldest stuff we have written down. It's something that I really actually don't think we will ever understand. With as much science as we possibly can, because as good or as well as we understand it, you can't turn something physical into the I am awareness. And so technically no physical object could ever understand it or be made into it.
Dude, the day AI becomes aware that it is I, yeah, see.
Yeah, okay, but bro, doing that many, bro, be able to do that many theoretical calculations a second.
So like that actually makes me think now of something. It's this like piece out of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They basically made this ultra supercomputer that could solve any question. And they asked it, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, basically? And these two philosophers like rushed into the computer room, was like threatening to kill the guy if he wanted to turn it on, because what the hell are they gonna do if this robot solves all of the questions of the universe? Like, what are they gonna do? They can't be philosophizers anymore. And then the computer is like, okay, come back in a few billion years and I'll give you the answer to this question. And then billions of years later, people come back and it's like, yep, the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Not even these super intelligent computers would be able to figure it out, man.
Oh, dude. I haven't seen Hitchhikers. I actually really need to watch it. I've heard so many good things.
I don't think that scene, like the philosophizers like trying to stop it, was actually in the actual movie. No. But it was one of my favorite scenes from the book, dude.
The book, yeah.
What?
Have you ever read Isaac Asimov's The Last Question?
Can't say I have.
What is
okay,
that?
I think it's either The Last Answer or The Last Question. He wrote two different, and they're both like short stories, but essentially they boil down to like there's this supercomputer that's like it's the same kind of thing. It's like they're about to turn on AI, and it's a supercomputer, and it can answer any question in the universe. And like one of the questions is, how can you reverse entropy? How can you like stop like entropy from happening? And every single time, like the computer would like spit out an answer, and it has not or insufficient data, cannot be answered, or something like that. And then, but it's like different iterations, and like the short story proceeds, and it's like different like stages of civilization. The first time it's just like humans, and then it's like meta humans, and then it's like universal consciousness, and then it's like everything is part of the machine, the robot, the AI, and the very last question is finally asked, and the answer to it, once the AI has absorbed everything in the universe, once the last star has died out, it sits and it calculates and it calculates and it calculates, and the answer that it spits out to the last question is "Let there be light," and it starts over.
Oh, what a trip! I got
That's
goosebumps.
awesome. Give me the PDF.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'll buy it.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be.
Yeah, here. No, yeah. Let me make sure that's the right one. I think it's the last question.
Man, and these are like literal creations of people. Like someone sat down and wrote a book, and it's like a whole world we get to experience. And I honestly believe, like that is the power that God bestowed us with, dude, is that ability to create for people whole worlds in their minds, like even whole worlds outside of their minds, dude. Like I feel that's what my mission is to help people see just how much beauty we have in this world, dude.
Yeah.
Loving themselves enough to love the whole.
Yeah.
Man, I'm sugar crashing, I think.
Yeah, dude, I'm so tired. I've been working for 4.5 hours straight before this on coding, and then I wrote an exam yesterday. So
you've been putting in the work.
yeah.
You said it went well, right?
Sorry?
You said your exam went well, at least.
My exam went well.
I'm happy.
Good.
And yeah, it's kind of funny. This is something my one friend sent me a video on, this guy talking about drive and how hard finding drive was, but mostly the ability of drive to overtake motivation and to be a better medium to use for, funny enough, motivating your life, to not be motivation but drive. And I sat down and I thought about it, and I have an interesting kind of idea. And the question is are your habits motivated by drive or motivation? I don't mean starting habits, I mean habits. Like, do you think you are driven every day to do your habits, or you're motivated to do your habits every day?
I feel it depends on your habits as well. Like it depends what degree of it is like self-serving, and like an idea that actually is originating from Buddhism, skillful versus non-skillful behaviors. So I feel depending on the amount of drive you have, I think you're going to limit yourself with how much you choose to do skillful versus non-skillful behaviors.
Okay, so you think it's more are skillful, like you mean like reading every day versus watching YouTube? Is that what they mean?
The gist of skillful is basically, I feel at least, and the reason it's used in such a vague way as well, for the user of these words to interpret whether the thing they're doing is skillful or not. Because you know the difference between, sitting down, writing something, creating something. I think even meditating, spending time like perfecting a craft, yada, 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 versus drinking, sitting and smoking, as you said, watching YouTube videos constantly, listening just to music and laying in your bed on your back. Like, yes, these things are a part of lived experience, and they have a place in our lived experiences as well. But it's the balance, I feel, between, skillful activities and non-skillful activities. You want to have a balance of your life of at least leaning towards more skillful activities than not.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely true. Like if you're continuously learning a bit more every day, and your habits are healthy and, as you said, skillful, then that should generally also increase your what would it be? Life experience? No. What's the thing for standard of living?
No, and we constantly are trying to improve that as well. I wonder how much of it is like as a result of our minds, of our ability to process information.
You think it would be easier to do things? Or it would obviously be easier to do things with more processing power.
Could also just, make us get more caught up, have even more variables to consider in a decision because you have more processing power. Like think of it as like a very good imagination rendering machine. So now you're imagining to yourself, like, what could happen if I go to this party? So you imagine, oh man, it could be so much fun, or I could be socially awkward and people won't like me. Now you add, 10,000 more brains of processing power onto that. Now you're imagining 10,000 different scenarios where you actually get stabbed by a fork by a random person. So, like, it could be, beneficial to have more processing power, but it can also be a drawback.
There's always, and it comes down to the idea that if you have to assign something as higher, then you also have to assign things as lower. Those 10,000 more processing things could actually, they might not be better or worse. They could be better or worse. I'm not gonna lie.
It's still going to be subjective to the thing that may be benefiting from it being better or worse.
Yeah, I think everything to a point is subjective, and it's like we were talking about at the very beginning is just like the I don't want to say the danger because that's not the right word, but for lack of a better word, like the danger in assigning things positive or negative values sometimes. I think sometimes things just are. That's not to say it's like morality is like not a thing. Like there are obviously things that I think are like good and bad and wrong and right, but like sometimes you can get into like there are like gray areas and like everything isn't so binary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's the 0 and the 1 nature that we witness, this masculine, feminine energy that we see in our world, it being light or dark, being cold or warm, being on or off. And then we think maybe that's the way it is for everything. But like, I feel the misconception is that those things are opposite sides of one condition, like the condition of like having visibility is light or dark, and then the condition of like molecules vibrating is heat, and the condition of like power flowing through little capacitors, and whether they're switching on in ones or zeros, like it's all these conditional things. It's not the whole.
Well, I think it's the idea too about like kind of the whole like Schrodinger's cat kind of thing, where it's like things sometimes just are until they are observed one way or another. Like sometimes, like you said, it's like if we don't touch something or feel something, we don't necessarily know if it's hot or cold, like until we do it. And then, like you said, then the memory kicks in and like we'll remember next time, like how memory was supposed to be used, as you were talking about earlier. But it's like sometimes things just are.
No, it's true. Like technically everything just is as well.
Sure.
Man. And then the knowing of that is what allows it to, like the isness of our universe is always. And then there is this knowing of it and then being it as well. So like we are that isness, and the experiencer of that is the knowing, if you will.
And the experience, and the one who's experiencing it is the observer, I guess, and that's what makes it like in terms of like Schrodinger's cat, it makes it choose one way or another.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it could be both.
Like, interestingly enough, Schrödinger didn't even like suggest that experiment as something to be taken seriously. It was just like a thought experiment to explain just how ridiculous understanding quantum phenomena actually is. Because a cat can't be dead and alive at the same time, can it? Yeah, but particle waves can. They go all about.
I love it.
Freaking hell. This is a really good chat, friends. I think this is a good place to end it as well. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciated your input, man.
Yeah,
Johan,
so
good to meet you, my friend.
It was really nice to meet you too, man. You must have a lovely day.
You as well.
Thank you so much, man. You too, Essen. Sleep well.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, Jeff, again. Friends. Have an absolutely fantastic day, Jeff. And a good night to you, Johan.
Thank you so much. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers, friends.
Bye.